What up, YouTube? It's me again. Knew that you thought that I wouldn't be back again, but here I am, back again, talking hoops. So today, what I want to talk about is how the NBA is moving in terms of themes and motifs. Yes, I said motif. You probably haven't heard that since your 11th grade English class, but I'm bringing it back today because I'm just that type of guy. I'm that motherfucker. But the NBA for the past, say, maybe not decade, but like probably since like 2016, has focused very heavily on quote unquote small ball, which has been, basically not having your typical, 7 foot tall center. Instead, you have someone playing the five that's maybe 6'8", 6'9", that can stretch out and shoot, as well as guard the perimeter. And it's similar. It's followed the same thing for the rest of the front court. You have guys who are 6'6" or 6'7" playing power forward now because they want stretch fours, stretch fives, and even the small forwards, the guys playing the three position, those guys have even shrunk down a little bit as well. You now have some fours that you have some threes that are like 6'4", 6'5", which before it was like, to be a real three in the NBA, you should be 6'6", but more preferably probably 6'7" and above. So the thing that I find interesting is it seems like now the NBA is almost moving towards tall ball, which has a similar feel to small ball, but the players are taller. And what I mean by this is, like, take the Boston Celtics, for example. They're probably going to have the same starting lineup next year, but they had a starting lineup, throughout the regular season and the playoffs of Drew Holiday at the 1, 6'4", Derek White at the 2, 6'4", Jaylen Brown at the 3, 6'6", Jason Tatum at the 4, 6'8", and then Porzingis at the center spot, or Al Horford. Al Horford being 6'10", Porzingis being 7'3". So the bigs aren't necessarily getting, much taller, right? They still want bigs to have the skill set to be able to stretch out to the perimeter, both defensively and offensively, mainly offensively. I think being able to stretch the floor and shoot from the outside is a much bigger deal for coaches and organizations to have in their big men, as opposed to someone that can go out and defend. But the whole idea is to create as many mismatches as possible that are in your favor, and to limit as many mismatches that are not in your favor. It's kind of a tongue twister. But I just think it's interesting because, like, the Mavericks are kind of doing it too, where they have, Kyrie, who's, pretty average height for a point guard, but he's not really playing point guard. It's Luka Doncic that's really, facilitating the offense and doing all that. And Luka is 6'7" or 6'8". So it seems like this tall ball situation is affecting the generally or typically smaller players or smaller positions on the court, whereas now teams are all trying to get players that are super tall, super athletic, that can handle the ball and facilitate the offense. And this kind of started with Ben Simmons, where you had a 6'10" guy who was bringing the ball up the court, but wasn't really a good shooter, but he was so tall and athletic and was creating such a mismatch with the majority of his opponents that it was a super helpful strategy, and it really allowed for the rest of the offense to really work itself out. And, now Ben Simmons is, not the same player that he used to be, but, I think that model kind of started. And then you had Luka Doncic, who was kind of taking it to a new level. But it seems like now teams are gravitating towards having a lineup that is 6'4" and above throughout, which, beforehand wasn't super common. And there's some teams where they're trying to do like lineups where they're like 6'6" and above, right? And you can do that, like realistically, Like the Detroit Pistons could probably do that. You could run Cade Cunningham at the 1. He's 6'6". You could run Ron Holland at the 2, 6'5", 6'6". He might be 6'7". Run Tobias Harris at the 3. And then you kind of got some other players to pick from for the 4 and the 5 spots. But you have enough players where you could run that type of scheme, and that might honestly be the way that they win, right? So I think this is something that we're going to see a lot more. This is something that's probably going to stick around for a while. It's obviously a lot more difficult to build a lineup like this, but if you match a lineup like the Celtics had with a team that is very talented playing small ball, the Celtics are probably going to come out on top because they're super athletic and they have height at every position. I think that's the real key, is having height at every position, is because, teams were figuring out how we can have skill at every position and how we can have, centers that can bring the ball up. 1 through 5 can bring the ball up. But it's a lot different when 1 through 5 can bring the ball up and 1 through 5 can defend 1 through 5, and they're all super tall, right? Like they're all over 6'4". So I think this is something that we're going to continue to see. It's going to be something that teams, kind of look for. And if there's ever an opportunity to find, a player that has decent guard skills but hasn't run the point before in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing teams draft players in college that played the wing or played, the 4 or the 5, and they try to turn them into ball handlers. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Bam Adebayo, in the next couple of years, especially if Jimmy Butler leaves the Heat. You might see Bam Adebayo bringing the ball up the court and being their main point guard. I mean, you have Jeremy Sohan for the Spurs playing point guard. That's probably going to be a little different now with Chris Paul there, but you catch my drift, where it's like teams are really trying to get like big ball handling guards that can facilitate the offense, because that in and of itself is creating such a mismatch for other teams. And you don't have to only you can't just guard shots anymore. You have to guard the point guard, similar to how you would go about guarding a quarterback in the NFL. Like, you have to limit all their options. You have to limit them running to the paint. You have to limit them passing the ball. You have to do everything in your power to kind of drain that guy's energy and, make things happen. So what do you guys think? You guys think we're going to see more of this? These taller point guards that are, kind of running the league. They're, leading the league in scoring. Luka Doncic, SGA. Is this something we're going to continue to see? I mean, Giannis also, could be classified as a ball handler as well. Trying to play that tall ball lineup. Let me know what you guys think, because I think the NBA has these shifts every couple of years, and a lot of teams try to emulate the previous teams that were in the finals. So you're going to see a lot of teams trying to replicate the type of model that the Celtics have, which I think is a lot easier said than done. But we'll see what happens next year.